I don't think that what you feel is just in your head. And I think that is an important conversation to have when either you yourself are a chronic illness sufferer or someone that you love. I understand and I get it. I've been living long enough, I've been working in the field long enough to understand that everyone does not understand their bodies. I also don't like the limitations behind what a test can show or not show, or what an exam or an x-ray or whatever, the limitations that exist. I think when you feel something is like off or something is wrong, I think that it is something that needs to be explored. And different rules of different rules may apply to different forms of medicine, and I understand and I get that. But I think we just have to stop ignoring. One thing that we can be empowered with is our ability to recognize that something is off. I know that there's some physiology and of course there's some understanding, and you don't have to learn everything, right? That's why we trust the different ones. And even with me, when I'm working with a patient, I want them to feel empowered to know some things, and I also want them to feel comfortable to ask questions. I know that with my mom, and for you all who have watched any of the videos here before, I've talked a lot about why I work in holistic medicine, why I've pursued learning about ancestral healing, why I have pursued even currently working in more TCM and all these things. It wasn't because like, oh, how many more letters can I get behind my name? The more we learn, the more tools we have, the more we can really help care for ourselves first and foremost, and then two, help to care for those we love, and then outside of that, right? If I continue to, see patients and such, I'm caring for people that go beyond like my immediate family, but they're also within my community. I think my mom, when she was going through, her illness, she was actually deteriorating and she was dying. And don't get me wrong, we're all dying daily, right? There's a part of our body that's being deteriorated the older we get, and we're gracefully aging. But I think there was an accelerated process that was happening that we just didn't understand. And so when that happens and when those signs are not fully understood and they're not fully being explained, I think it can be terrible. I think it can be really terrible because there's certain pivots that you make depending upon the severity. If I forget, oh, I didn't grab any milk, I can't have a meal that may include milk or bread or eggs, right? Like these things that people typically eat, versus I haven't eaten all day. There's no food in my home. I am hungry and I have been hungry for days. There's a different posture on which I'm going to move, right? I think when you're looking at the signs and symptoms, whether it is the skin deteriorations, whether it is the pain that just won't go away, whatever those things are. And if I was to look back now and be like, were my mom's signs diminished? Were they being dismissed and ignored? Probably. And she just probably didn't have the words to say, I think I'm dying, but just, I don't feel well. Her eyes, the jaundice, I know that term now, I didn't fully understand it before. The constant pain, just the things that were happening. Um, I think it's important to listen, and we have to learn to listen in a different way. I need to learn how to listen to my own body. That's important. Turn on your listening. I remember one of my professors always telling us when we're dealing with a patient, turn on your listening. So turn on your listening when something doesn't feel right. There is a body mind misunderstanding. And what do I mean is that sometimes the things going on in the body cannot be instantly or clearly understood in the mind. And so I'm trying to be logical here, but something is happening within my person. I think, getting books and writing down symptoms or things that are off, start to track those things and see how long that's been going. And that's something that you should be encouraging the patients and the clients that you're working with as well, to track what's happening. And I picked up a book, and I get it. We're in a day and age where people have keep notes and digital and whatever you need to use to keep track of those things. Also, the dismissal, and I mean that in the way of, do I feel heard when I go into certain spaces? And I think because of the biases that exist, that people will go into spaces and not feel heard. And they're not feeling heard because they're not being heard. And that's why with anything that we're doing, any work that you're putting your hands to, but primarily when we're working with people who are chronic illness sufferers, or you're working in healthcare, there has to be a grace in how you operate and in how you move, because you bring that unkindness and that bias into those spaces with people who are suffering. It's going to perpetuate some of that dismissal that we were talking about before. And so as I close this video and, kind of get into some other things in future conversation, looking back at my mother's situation, I wish there was probably more conversation. I wish I knew more, so that perhaps we would have been able to support her in a way that made sense for the condition that was happening to her body and the prevention that we know is possible. I don't live in regret, because one of the beautiful things that I have access to now is to help others to navigate through these spaces. And so, those of you all who are also working with people, don't negate the power of prevention and the work that you're doing, and helping your patients, your clients, to turn on their listening as you turn on yours to help to support them. Grace and peace, you all. Catch you next time.